Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest this segment is Mike Dye. He's the CTO for civilian agencies at NetApp. And Mike, I guess let's start with data centers and consolidation and reduction. How can cloud enable and help that?
Well, that's a very good question. What we're seeing in the civilian space is a need to reduce the number of data centers that they have. They consume a lot of power, they consume a lot of real estate. So what we're trying to offer our customers is an ability to move their applications to the cloud as a way to reduce that dependency on their data center. So we can help them deploy storage near the cloud or in the cloud, yet still use the same management tools and the same access mechanisms to get to their data as they had before. Because what we don't want to do in creating these other data centers or these other sites is create silos of information that can't be managed effectively. So we want to ensure that as they move out and reduce these data center implementations, keep those management tools the same and don't create a bigger management headache than you started with.
So in other words, it looks like one almost big single virtual data facility that they have, even though it might be physically in different spots.
That's exactly right. And you want to make sure that you can manage it the same way. We talk about integrating private and public clouds with a hybrid architecture. So how can I make sure that my data gets replicated to a secure location that I can count on? And how can I make sure that when I run test and dev operations in the cloud that I use the same data that I use in my production so that we can effectively implement a system that runs well for them, that doesn't count on strange data that isn't appropriate to what they're doing. And on top of that, not to have to physically move it every time. Because the biggest challenge in cloud computing is moving that data around. It's terabytes of information, and we're still dealing with tiny wires that go between sites. As fast as things move today, that's the biggest challenge that we have.
And speaking of tiny wires, I think disaster recovery is on a lot of agencies' minds, always has been, this whole COOP idea. How can a cloud resource help with the disaster and recovery planning?
What you can do is you can move your backups to the cloud and you can move your data to the cloud in an effective way so that if you have to recover in the cloud, your data is already there. So we've had this concept for a long time in the industry of getting your backups off-site. It's a Katrina moment. It's a Benghazi moment. It's the kind of things that you worry about where your entire data center or a geographic area around your data center is no longer available to be able to provide services for you. So we have to move that data off-site. Whether it's tapes or other mechanisms, they like to put it off-site. But by being able to remotely move this data into the cloud and have those compute resources up there available at your disposal, now I can restore that information in the cloud, provide services from the cloud until I can get my data center back online.
And can that help agencies maybe not have to have full, complete replication data centers somewhere across state lines or with two utilities and all of this with cloud? Can cloud prevent some of that cost?
That's exactly what it does for you. It eliminates the need to have another physical data center that requires plumbing, pipe, cooling, all of the things that you need to provide. You don't have to build that out. And for agencies that don't have huge budgets, it's a great way to provide disaster recovery to their users without having to call a contractor and build a new facility.
So you can really reduce the number of data centers just by using cloud for disaster and backup recovery right then and there.
It's a huge win. And what we're really trying to help customers avoid is, your favorite truck driver pulling up to the back of your building every week, taking a case of tapes and driving off to a site that will protect that data. Now I can virtually hand the data off to that truck driver over a wire, and I can move those backups off-site, and I still get the same benefits. I can either recover from that site and bring it in electronically from there, or I can recover in the cloud and provide services from that location.
And what should agencies do to avoid vendor lock-in when they're choosing cloud providers?
The most important thing is to ensure that your cloud implementations work with the data services that you know and love, that it's not something that each different cloud provider offers as a separate entity. So we can do things like put your data near the cloud. We could take advantage of the links that these cloud providers can give you and put an array in your site, in your cage, and offer your storage that you own to these other cloud vendors ad hoc. We actually have a government agency that just deployed this. It It's going to allow them to compete the compute resources against one another because they've already got a pipe going between their storage and those cloud providers. But it's all about making sure you're managing your data and being able to replicate to those sites with the same data services you know and love, so that you don't have to physically move it from cloud to cloud with some kind of server tool.
Sure. And if my applications are in a cloud environment, will that affect my day-to-day operations? Will users know any difference? I mean, how will that affect me?
Not if it's properly done, and that's what we really try and encourage our users to do, is because you don't want people to know that they're operating in the cloud. You want them to know that you're providing their service, that you're serving up their application, that you're doing the good work for them, not that, oh, today we're working in the cloud, so it's going to operate differently than it did before. And that's really what the message is about. Keep that data management the same everywhere you go so that I can effectively move that data and back it up without change to my normal operations.
And maybe a little tweak of applications to make sure that they can live with the cloud distance that's involved, the hops?
It depends on the application. When we put the data near the cloud, we actually make sure that it's in a facility that is in a distance that does not affect latency. That's the biggest challenge that we have when you look at distance between sites, is how long it takes to actually retrieve and write a record or a file. So we want to put it as close to the cloud as possible so latency does not become an inhibiting factor.
All right. Mike Dye is CTO for Federal Civilian Agencies at NetApp. I'm Tom Temin. This is Trends in Data Management, sponsored by NetApp on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.